You are listening or watching Light Up with Shua. These are the short clips, so for complete interviews, please visit the website or the channel and watch or listen. Thank you. Let's talk to Judy. Hi, Judy.
Greetings, my dear. Thank you for that lovely introduction.
Thank you for being here.
Good to be here.
So, let's begin.
All right.
I think I would like you to talk about what was your profession before you got into interfaith. So, would you briefly introduce yourself and talk about that a bit?
And I'll do a little bit of the ancient history, because if we do talk about parenting, I'll rely on some of my counseling experience.
Sure.
So when I finished college, which was a few years ago,
Not too late.
not too long,
ago,
right?
Yeah.
I went into an organization called VISTA, which was a domestic arm of the Peace Corps at the time, and did a year of service in inner city Philadelphia with heroin treatment program folks. And then from there, as you know, I got kind of excited about aviation and started flying. And that ultimately, I got my license, my private pilot's license, and ultimately that got me a job in a very circuitous way, unexpected way, with the Federal Aviation Administration. And I worked in the FAA for 30 plus years.
Only?
Only, yeah, it seems,
Wow.
I know.
Yeah.
In mostly the air traffic
enjoyed
organization.
it?
I loved it. It was great work and great people. And I am now retired and a full-time volunteer. And part of that is interfaith work, which brought me to you and other. If you carry a passion for aviation and a love for that,
Then
you'll
try
find
that.
your way. You bet.
You
Bet.
All
I
right.
would really encourage folks.
Thank you. Is parenting selfless?
It's an amazing question. I suspect, but this will be only from observation, not from experience, that it's got to be a little of both. A lot of selfless, but there would be some selfish too, but mostly selfless from what I observed. As you know, I don't have any children.
Of your own,
of my own,
biologically.
biologically, but I do have a couple of goddaughters who I adore, and I observed their growing up, and of course my own parents. But what I was going to say, when I started counseling the adolescents, 13 to 18, I was only 23, 24 myself.
Very young.
And I related more to the teenagers than I did their parents. And even though I was supposedly providing communication skills workshops for the parents, I felt more simpatico with the teenagers. Over time, I came to have much more respect for the parents and the incredibly difficult job of being a parent and the very selfless job of being a parent. And I heard one of your other interviewees, Dr. Joe, the name is
Fitzpatrick or Kelly?
Kelly, Dr. Kelly,
Dr.
goodness sakes, thank you. Say that he thought one of the things we needed to do for parents was give them more resources to be able to do their jobs better. And that was my experience in the counseling program. Nobody set out to be a bad parent. They all wished to be better, to do it better, that they hadn't made the mistakes they had made. And I don't think there were the resources there to really help them when they hit the snags. So if I were going to leave any message, I would say, anybody that chooses to be a parent, thank you. And that whatever we can do to make their jobs, to take a little load off, to offer some resources, is critical. So that would be the message I'd want to give as an observer.
I know that you're a very good listener. So do you think that's important in parenting? Why are you in interfaith? What brought you? What tickles you? What bothers you?
Oh, dearie. I know you know this story, but for the sake of the podcast, I really had never felt, I was still working for the Federal Aviation Administration. I had no real thought about what I would do when I retired. That seemed 100 years away. And then 9/11, 2001 happened, and I was saddened by our country's response. I thought, instead of going to war, we should be figuring out a way to talk to people about what was it that drove them to that level of desperateness. And I kept having this reoccurring thought that I couldn't get out of my head of women of all different faiths and all different cultural backgrounds sitting around talking to each other and finding out that we actually were quite similar, even though we looked quite different in what we believed or our background. I couldn't get that out of my head. And it's ultimately what brought me to interfaith work was how could one begin to have those conversations with people who seemed so different and got to know, you know what, we're not different. I love my kids, you love your kids, we want the best for them. We ought not be shooting each other, we ought to be talking to each other. So that was kind of what moved me in that direction.
Wonderful.
And it was a talk about Ramadan and about the fasting of Ramadan that I heard that made me want to sign up for an interfaith council. I thought, I need to learn more about Islam and
When
Ramadan.
you were here?
Yes, in
okay,
Groton
okay.
really, I heard that conversation and
Okay.
so that's what got me started.
So what have you learned so far? Is anything different? What can you teach us about your interfaith experience? How can you educate us? Somebody who doesn't know much about.
Wow. I know one of the questions was, how do you bring people to the table who don't believe in interfaith? And I mean, that is a lifetime question for me. I haven't got a good answer yet. I think, what I continue to learn is that when I am sitting at the table with someone that I don't know, and we're having a cup of tea, and I'm beginning to learn about what lights them up, to use your beautiful words, it's an enlivening time. I feel that I learn so much more about what's important to them. It's really hard when you've sat across the table from someone and look into their eyes and understand a wee bit about what's important to them. It's hard to hate them. It's hard. At that point, they're not a fill in the blank. They're not another.
Yeah.
They're Susie. They're Fatima. They're Matilda. They're human beings, and it continues to be what moves me to want to have that experience for other folks as well. Just get to know. I hear people badmouth a group of people, and I think you just don't know anybody in that group. It would change if you had a name of someone you really cared about. How do we do that?
So do you think that you are in a better position now than you were a few years ago when you didn't know much about other faiths or other ethnicities and the cultures as
Yes.
much as you know today? Are you in a better place?
Oh, darling, thank you for asking that question. Absolutely.
You are capable of doing that. You have been doing so much, so
Thank you, dearie.
don't worry.
All right.
All right. Okay. What is the best relationship you have in your life at this point?
I think that it is with my husband most of the time. Are you watching?
What is the purpose of your life at this time? Because that can change also.
Oh,
At
indeed.
this time, what it is? Any message of hope?
Can I read you one thing? Because I did
Yes.
prepare for
Yeah,
this.
okay, that's
And
good.
this, I was thinking, what in the world could I say that would be hopeful?
Yeah.
I'm currently working on kind of deepening my meditation practice. And I do a little bit of reading before. And I think part of that practice is to, when things show up, when thoughts show up, self-negative ones or whatever they are, to just acknowledge them. Oh, there's that. Oh, I recognize that. And then let it go without intense, oh, not that one again. So it is a gentleness with what shows up. And I think the same with self-analysis.
My name is Shua, and I'm the host and founder of a podcast called Light Up with Shua on conscious living and parenting. I hope you already are watching or listening to this podcast, and if you are not, please subscribe, rate, review, and share. My guest today is Daisy Khan. She is Skyping with us from New York. This is part 1 with her. She is an accomplished and ambitious woman. So find out about her on this podcast, and also to learn more about her, go to www.daisykhan.com. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum and greetings, Daisy.
Walaikum salam. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for taking our time. I really appreciate. And would you please introduce yourself for our audience, who you are and what do you do?
Yeah, so I'm Daisy Khan, and I founded WISE, Women's Islamic Initiative in Spirituality and Equality. We are a woman-led organization that does a lot of peace-building work, interfaith relations, and human equality, which includes women's rights And we, are not afraid to take bold steps where we need to take bold steps to create a harmonious environment for all of us.
What do you mean by bold steps? Let's talk about Wise Up and then come to your Born with
Memoir.
Wings, yes, memoir. So talk about Wise Up. That is a very rich book, and I have been still reading and going through it. Talk about that, please. What is the goal for having that book?
Since 9/11, American public has been asking Muslims, why don't we speak out and against terrorism, and where are the Muslim voices? And I felt that the time had come for us to do collective action. All the things that we have been saying for all the years, put it together in one place, but also understand that a lot of the fear of Islam comes from ignorance of Islam, and not only ignorance but distortion of Islam, which is being promoted not only by the Islamophobes but the extremists themselves. So Wise Up is our initiative where we brought together 72 voices, 72 authors, scholars, activists.
I'm showing the book.
And if you turn it around in the back, you will see how many contributors we have.
Yes.
I mean, it's
and you can see I'm reading.
Yeah, and it's a remarkable tool, and it's meant to aid people. It's meant to aid politicians, ordinary folks, ordinary citizens, interfaith allies who want to advocate on our behalf, don't know how to advocate. So it's basically us telling our story, defining ourselves in our terms, showing our history in America, how long we've been here, who we are, the challenges that we face, how we are contributing to America. So there's an entire section of notable American Muslims.
Yes,
every morning you're having your Chobani yogurt. Understand that there's a Muslim refugee who was behind that. And, while you're sitting there watching football or baseball, understand that a lot of these players are Muslim. And if you are watching the Dr. Oz show, understand that Dr. Oz is a Muslim of Muslim heritage. And so we wanted to let people know that Muslims are also contributing to the social fabric of America. So then the second section of the book deals with how to distinguish Islam, the religion that Muslims practice.
That's very important.
That's very important from what the extremists are doing and how they're exploiting Islam. And just like Jeff Sessions just exploited, a verse out of the Bible and said the Bible told me this, and he was taken out of context, and there was so much pushback in the Christian community. Similarly, we're also showing the general public now how Muslims are pushing back at these extremist exploitation of our text. And then the third section of the book goes directly into how to prevent and how to insulate community from harm. And it has a beautiful section on parenting.
Oh, yeah. I'll talk about that later.
Yeah,
yes,
and a section on how to create resilient communities, how to intervene if somebody's having a problem, how to understand the vulnerabilities.
So it's like a manual. It's a manual for anybody to reference to and, find out anything related to Islam, Muslims. And can they connect?
Also more than that. It's more than just for Muslims, because now you have the same issues permeating in other communities. So you have a lot of vulnerable people that are being recruited into gangs, into white supremacy, and a lot of them are innocent, ignorant, going online, falling into the trap. And so we want people to understand this tool can also be used by other communities.
Exactly.
I mean, I have already had teachers tell me, oh my God, I want to use this bullying section and how to be a good bystander, or how to not counter hate in my class. So it can be ordered online at www.wiseupreport.org.
Okay.
And you just place an order, and it's $30, and it'll be shipped to you right away.
Okay. And is there any other place? Are these going to be in libraries? What other projects are you doing with that? I think you...
So Wise Up book, when it came out, is now being turned into a campaign. And the campaign means we go out there into different communities. We do town hall dialogue. So if anybody wants to invite us to do a town hall dialogue around the content of the book, we're happy to go into any communities.
Doesn't matter who I talk to, majority of them said, you have to listen.
Yeah.
Listening skills. Listening is important. And you just said that too. So I would really like to say that we need to listen. We all are learning. but we need to pay attention to it.
Yeah, listening and creating boundaries.
Ah.
So the other thing is that you do have to create boundaries. I think that somehow motherhood is defined by, you birthing life, bringing life into this world. So I wanted children as badly as everybody else, but I didn't succeed. And I think destiny intervened and said, no, this is not the plan for you. Although I still imagine what my children would be like. I imagine them. I actually can see them.
Wow.
I imagine that they're a composite of this and a composite of that. But, we have a saying in our tradition that a child is a blessing, but a mother who has a child is like has a blessing, but not having a child is mercy. So in other words, God has mercy on you because raising children is not easy.
I read this sentence in your book. See, I
Yeah.
read it well.
Yeah, it's not easy. And so
Yes.
I was freed up from that responsibility. So I could do other things in my life that I would not have had the time to do. Nurturing is part of motherhood. And so whether you nurture your own child or you nurture some other child or you nurture other people's children, that is what to me motherhood is all about. So I took it and I applied it to my community.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. I think you had a bigger role to play, I guess. Thank you for watching part 1 with Daisy Khan. Please stay tuned for part 2 with her as well. Thank you. Thank you for watching these short clips. For complete interviews for Judy, go to 15 and 16 for TV and 47 and 48 for audio podcast. And for Daisy Khan, go to 12 and 13 for TV and 44 and 45 for audio podcast. Thank you.